Hey gang, this is Mike with my Real Estate Dojo. Today's session is about totally understanding the closing cost for two reasons. One, you're going to be able to understand all the costs involved in closing a deal so you can tell if it's profitable or not. And two, which is very important as well, is for you to be able to explain to your motivated seller all the costs you have to actually pay to do closing. At the same time, closing, or the cost of selling a home or buying a home, divides in two parts. As an investor, the part one is when you talk to a motivated seller, you're going to have a closing cost. And then if you're a fix and flipper, if you're an owner financing, or if you're some type of investor that you're buying quickly and selling quickly, then you're going to incur two closing costs. So a lot of times my students don't understand that when they buy a property, they got to pay closing costs, or maybe there's potential to pay closing costs because you're dealing with a motivated seller. And then when you turn around and fix the property, you got to turn around and pay another set of closing costs. And what I want to talk to you today about is the second part of closing. Once you buy the property, you rehab it, you fix it. When you want to turn around and sell the property, what are all the costs involved in it? Because when I was starting out, I didn't realize all the costs involved in it, and a lot of my students don't. And I just want to go ahead and actually spell out A to Z what all the costs are. So let's go ahead and dive in and get started, gang. Now, one of the things for the closing costs is going to be basically the realtor commission. That's just a given. You know, in the state of Texas or even in the United States, the average realtor commission cost is anywhere from 5 to 7%. I would say normally right around 6%. So if you have a $100,000 home, right off the bat, you got to spend $6,000 just in realtor costs. So that's something that you really have to understand whenever you're buying it from closing number one, because now we're talking about closing number two. So whenever you're talking to a motivated seller, you have to really understand all your closing costs at closing number two, so you can explain it to the seller before you close on closing number one. So one of the biggest costs is the realtor commission. Like I said, it's going to be an average between 5 to 7%. And now this is not something that I just pull out of my hat. It's actually, if you go in Texas Realtor Commission, which is track, you can see what the average is, or throughout the nation what the average is. And the realtor association actually monitors that, so you could go out there and look at those stats. Okay. Another thing that most investors don't think about is that when a home is listed with a realtor, the average realtor is going to negotiate 2, 3, even 4% of the asking price. And again, you go to the realtor organization websites and pull these stats out to see that throughout America, what is the average realtor that negotiates, and you can see that they're roughly between 2 to 5%, right around there. Okay, so what that means is if you have a $100,000 home, you can expect the realtor is going to negotiate down $3,000, and their offer is going to be $97,000 to you instead of the $100,000. So now on top of the $3,000 discount, you got to also consider the realtor commission, the 6%. Okay, now here's another cool thing that you really have to understand is closing costs. Closing costs is broken down in two parts. You have part number one, which is the title policy. And in Texas, title policy is controlled by governmental agency, and it's standardized. So if you have a house that's worth 100, everybody's going to pay the same exact price for that title policy. Bob's not going to pay a lower price, and Julie's not going to pay a higher price because of their ability to negotiate. So that's fixed. So again, closing costs divides up in two sections. Number one is the title policy, and that's a big chunk of the cost, which is, I would say, about 50%. Now, the other 50% is what I call the junk fees. And what do I mean by the junk fees? Now you have things as like notaries, deliveries, because somebody has to deliver this paper, filing fees, you have the title company charging you a bunch of junk fees for attorney prep fees and this fee and that fee, and that's where the other half comes into closing costs. And closing costs, I would say that when I do the numbers, I always do it at 3%, okay? Now, it could be a little bit less, it could be a little bit more, but you're in a gooder, safer position to say 3%. It's kind of like there's a risk driving, but if you buckle up, you have a less chance of getting fucked up. So the 3% is buckling up and you're taking all the precautions not to get in a fucked up situation. Excuse my language. All right, so let's recap. You got realtor commission, you got the realtor discount fees, and now you got your closing costs, which is roughly about 3%. Now, as an investor, when you buy a property, you're gonna get it three ways. You're gonna get a hard money lending, you're gonna actually pay yourself cash, or you're gonna get some kind of loan like private money, or a standardized loan like a bank. Either way, even if you pay cash, you have to consider your holding cost. Okay, what do I mean by holding costs? Well, when the property is vacant, you're gonna have to pay for the principal, the interest, okay, taxes, insurance, okay, all the utilities, because you can't do any showings if you don't have water or if you don't have light, okay? I mean, you can, but the probability of getting your asking price and things of that nature is going to decrease significantly. So holding cost plays a big part. And the crazy thing about holding cost is it's a variable cost. It's not a fixed cost. What I mean by variable is the longer that you have the property, the more it's going to cost you and it's going to eat into your profits, okay? But now, one thing I really, really want you guys to understand is that when you have a vacant home, now I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an insurance agent, but just as a professional landlord, this is my understanding of doing my due diligence significantly and talking to professionals, is that you can't have your normal insurance. For example, if you have a normal insurance that you have, for example, for landlording, and you have the house vacant and you're rehabbing it, you can't have that insurance. You're going to have this extra expensive insurance. Or if the property's been vacant for a few months just because you fixed it up, now you're trying to sell it, you can't get your average insurance, commercial insurance policy like a landlord policy or fire policy. What you need to do is get the vacancy insurance. And these things, these little babies, cost a lot more than normal insurance. And the other fucked up thing about it is that this insurance you pay up front, and then they're not going to prorate your money whenever the deal closes. For example, it's not like you pay for a year policy. If you use only 3 months of it, they're going to refund the other X months back to you. No, you're going to pay as many months, and then if you happen not to use all of it, guess what? The insurance company keeps that money. So these are some important factors that most rookies do not consider. Or for example, a simple thing is, for example, lawn services. If you have the property, you got to cut the grass every week, 25 bucks times 4, that's 100 bucks. Let's say it takes a couple of months. If you have a pool in the back, so you have to consider all these things whenever you're putting an offer in on closing number 1. Remember, we're talking about closing number 2. You already bought it from Motivated Seller, you fixed it up, and now you're going to put it for sale. And now these are all these costs that you're going to run into, guys. So let's recap. You got realtor commission at 7%, realtor buyer discount between 2 to 5%, closing costs 3%, holding costs unknown. You have in holding costs things as in principal reduction, interest, tax, insurance, utilities like water, electricity, and yard keep, and etc. Okay. Now, another thing that you need to consider is that you're going to have like marketing costs. Okay. Even though you're going to put it on the MLS, and you're going to wait around, have a realtor bring you a buyer, the best thing to do as an investor is to go out there and hustle and bustle and bring your own buyer, so you don't have to pay that other 3% realtor commissions. And the way to do that is in these little marketings where you put your own sign out there in the front, you print your own flyers and put it out there, and you go distribute your flyers to X, Y, and Z, and you go ahead and promote your own listings on, for example, online classifieds like Craigslist, Backpages, and you do pay to be submitted on some of these website directories and things of that nature. So you can take those actions to decrease paying the 7% realtor commission, even though you have a listing, because if you can find your own buyer, then you don't have to pay the whole 6%, 7% commission, especially if you do what I do, where you don't lock yourself up with a realtor, where if you find a buyer, that you still have to give them a commission, because that's really stupid and idiotic, because you did all the work, okay? Now, something else you might want to think about is that when you have a vacant property, not only do you have insurance for vacancy issues, which is more expensive, but more importantly, you're gonna have to put some money aside for theft, because if a theft happens, you gotta pay this deductible. You know, it could be $500, $1,000, 1%, I don't know, it just depends on what you negotiate, but realistically, you don't want to sink all your money into the property and you're dead broke and something happens, you don't even have the money to pay the deductible, and guess what? That happens to people, guys, and that's why I'm doing this video, to help you understand all your costs, okay? Now, another thing that a lot of people don't consider is, let's say you rehab the property, ooh, you did a really great job, you did an A+ job. Now you find a buyer, you guys go under contract, the inspector guy comes out there. And these motherfucking inspectors, man, they're always finding problems, even if you have a brand spanking new home. And the reason is that that's what they get paid for, is to find problems, okay? No, so what does that have to do with your closing costs? Well, let's say an inspector finds 9 things that needs to be done. Even though they're not minor things, you have to do those for 2 reasons. One, if an item is, the inspector inspects, if it's a very important component of the home, you have to get that fixed, or a lender or a bank is not gonna lend money on the property. And since a retail buyer doesn't have cash like investors like ourselves, they're gonna go to a bank and they're gonna be relying on the mercy of the bank. And so whatever the bank says they have to do. If the bank says, hey, out of those 9 things that the inspector found, you gotta do 1, 2, and 3, 100%, or we're not gonna give the buyer this loan, and guess what, guys, you're shit out of luck. You gotta do those 3 things, or no, you're not gonna be able to sell to any other retail buyers out there. 0 zilch, okay? Because they're all gonna go through the same exact hiccup or problem, because they don't have funds. Those 3 things are major components of the home that all banks are gonna require you to fix that, okay? So that's some shit that you can't even mess around with, because if that flag goes up, you really got to fix that flag, okay? Now, that's one part of the inspection cost. The other part is, let's say the other, out of those 9 items, and 3 of them you have to do. But there's 6 other things that you don't have to do. They're just minor things, like a little scratch here, a little light bulb missing there, you know, a filing cabinet drawer doesn't open. Just little minor things that may cost another $2,000, $3,000, $1,500, $8,000. Who knows, right? In cost. You're gonna have theft. You're gonna have inspection costs, which are gonna be like major stuff that needs to be done and minor stuff that need to be done. Okay, guys. Now, another thing that you want to think about is that if I sell a home, or if I do owner financing, what I like to do is wrap it with the home warranty, okay? For $500, $700, depends what company you go to, you could offer a year home warranty. And that's a great thing, because a lot of retail buyers eat that up like the monster and the cookie man, okay? So that's a good thing. So again, that's gonna add a little closing cost. And another thing to think about is, for example, termites. If you have termites, then, especially if you're in the south like we are in Texas, you know, that can add some cost into it, from the inspection to the treatment, etc., guys. Okay, so now you kind of understand majority of all the costs that go into closing. Now that you understand all the majority of costs that go into closing for closing number 2, now it allows you to open your eyes and really understand, whenever you go talk to a motivated seller, how to position yourself, how to make an offer, and how to justify your number, especially if they're a logical consumer, with all this cost you have to pay. Because not only are you going to have to pay closing number 2,
you might have to pay closing number one because you might be buying it from one of the seller and you're offering them to pay for their closing. So in a sense, you have to make sure your offer is good enough, if it's term, if it's cash, that you get the deal where you're able to maybe pay for closing number one, maybe you don't have to, which is great, but you're gonna definitely have to pay for closing number two, which is once you buy the property, and if you're one of these investors that's gonna fix it up, or whatever, you're gonna turn around and sell it quickly, you're gonna have that second cost, all right? Now, since I'm already on this topic, let's talk about a little closing number one. Okay, if you're dealing with motivated sellers like what I teach, and I'm not talking about buying HUDs or things of that other nature, going to the auction, things like that. I'm talking about fishing for the motivated sellers, and that's what I specialize in, guys. That's my black belt. Okay, is dealing with motivated sellers. And if you're gonna buy a property from motivated sellers, you're gonna have many of the same closing costs if you want as a closing number two, But for me, I eliminate a lot of those costs because I'm a seasoned investor, and I don't recommend you do that if this is your first deal, you've never done that. But as you mature and you get better, you might want to be able to do some of this stuff yourself. For example, one way that I eliminate, for example, the realtor commission is that I've actually have my own realtor company. Okay, if you don't have a realtor company, another suggestion is that you could use what's called a flat fee MLS. Now, what is a flat fee MLS? A flat fee MLS is a powerful tool, especially for investors, to use to get all the marketing, all the expertise of a realtor, all the contracts of a realtor without paying all the realtor commissions. So with my company, Plug and Realty, if you guys have a property you want to use our flat fee MLS in the state of Texas, we could definitely help you out. For $495, you're able to eliminate all the realtor commissions. So for a flat fee of less than $500, you're able to put your property on the MLS, which gets indexed and synthesized with millions of, hundreds and thousands of other websites, from big websites like Google, Yahoo, to little mom and pop realtor businesses and realtor websites, etc. So not only are you able to monetize on the marketing, but then you get the actual guidance of a professional realtor. And then more importantly, you get the actual paperwork, okay, like the contracts, options, etc. of a realtor. And the great thing is that you don't have to pay all the realtor commissions, okay? Now, if you use the flat fee MLS, there's a good probability that you can find your own buyer and then have to pay zero commission, just that $495. Okay. If you guys are interested on the flat fee MLS, let me know and I'll be happy to have my broker help you out. So one of the ways that I save money is use the flat fee MLS if I didn't have a real estate company, but since I do, I just go ahead and have my real estate company do it and it's saves me money. But you guys should use a flat fee MLS. Now, another thing that I do is closing costs. The way I decrease my closing costs is that, I know how to do searches at the county clerk's office. I know how to read title searches. So I could do all this stuff myself, but I've actually found people that's what they do. They do title searches for a couple of $100. I have somebody do a title search for me. Okay. Instead of going to a big fancy title company or escrow company, I'll just go to my attorney's office. And instead of paying all these $3,000, $4,000 for a closing, I can get the closing done for $1,500, and even if I really wanted to go even lower, I can get it done for $750. Okay, so now I have to do a lot of the footwork myself, but again, I'm a seasoned investor. I know how to deal with the HOA. I know how to go file at a county clerk's office. I know how to do my own title searches. I know how to do a lot of the prep works to help the attorney decrease my costs. Now, I don't recommend that for everybody, but when you first start out, go the safest route, do a couple of deals, and then learn to stretch a little further, before you know you're touching your toes, guys. It's no big deal, all right? So that was like 2 ways that I decrease my cost whenever I'm buying it from a motivated seller from closing number one. Another thing that I do is that if it's a cookie cutter house, for me, I don't buy title policy. Now I don't recommend that for you guys, but for me, I don't buy title policy on it because if the seller just bought it 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, it's a cookie cutter property, and I look at the title chain, and I pay somebody to pull it up, and the lawyer says, hey, it's a clean title. Why should I buy a title policy? They just bought a title policy a couple of months ago, a couple of years ago, and so since I'm a professional, I'm not going to spend the $1,500 to buy a title policy. Now, I don't recommend it for you, but for me, it works good in my favor. Have I got burnt? No, I haven't. Can I get burnt? Absolutely, and that's why I don't recommend it for you guys. But once you learn how to fight, maybe you could get into the ring with bigger opponents and have a higher risk of getting knocked the fuck out, but at the same time you have a higher risk of profiting. So that's how life is, guys. Some other ways that I cut costs is, I got good handyman, good contractor, so when that inspector comes up, I need a roof, or I need the plumbing, or whatever it is, I have people in place that can actually do it, okay, for a good price. So in a nutshell, when I do the closing number 1, I am in total control. I'm able to spend as little money as I want or as much money as I want. When I do the closing number 2, which is the traditional way, then I really don't have that much control because I have to do the dance as everybody else does the dance, normal people, the herd. And to do that, you gotta pay a lot more money. And that's why I'm doing this video for you guys, so you understand both closing costs, so you could able to give an offer to a motivated seller and create a win for you and create a win for them. Since you have this knowledge, now you could actually help the seller understand all the stuff that they have to pay for, which basically helps you negotiate. Now again, don't just watch me and then watch 10 other guys. Watch me go take massive action. Then when you come up to a hiccup, come back to this post or to my YouTube channel, ask me a specific question and I'll be happy to help you guys out. Now this is America, the grass is so green. Go out there and hustle and bustle. Don't take a no. And this is Michael with my Real Estate Dojo, and I'll talk to you later. And don't forget, guys, if you like these videos, please share it, please comment, and please share. And if you really think I'm providing value, please support me and buy some of my digital products. I have a variety of stuff from contracts, phone scripts, flyers, ways to protect your deals, etc. Gang, this is Mike. Go out there and hustle. I'll talk to you later. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.